So we were talking about Pat Bracco, possible Pat. Now what Pat did, as we said in the last session, is that when the willpower kicked in, the first thing he did was he removed everything from his house that could possibly be a stumbling block. But the next thing he did was he discovered what I would like to call a keystone decision. Now I get this concept from Charles Duhigg. He wrote a book called The Power of Habit, and it's a great book. A lot of the information that I'm giving you in this course actually comes from his book, The Power of Habit, as well as some other resources, Jim Wilder and so forth. So a keystone habit is one decision that actually incorporates multiple decisions. One thing that you can change in your life, one new habit that you can espouse, one new routine that actually encapsulates multiple routines and multiple habits and brings them all together. So remember I talked about getting out of the decision phase? Well, this is part of that process of getting out of the decision phase, is simplifying your change to one simple thing. So often our life change becomes so complex and so complicated in our own minds that we talk ourselves right out of it. So here's what Pat did. The first thing he did was he threw away all the food in his house. The second thing he did was he made a simple decision. From this day forward, I will walk to get every meal that I eat. From this day forward, I will walk to get every meal that I eat. Now, the grocery store was 1.5 miles away from his house. So he goes to sleep that night, wakes up the next morning, and walks 1.5 miles to the grocery store, buys his breakfast food, walks 1.5 miles back home, makes his breakfast and eats it. Notice he only buys breakfast food. At lunchtime now, he's got to walk back to the grocery store, buy food for lunch, walk back home, make his lunch and eat it. At dinner time, he's got to walk back to the grocery store, buy his dinner, walk home, make his food and eat it. Why is this important? Because suddenly Pat is walking 9 miles a day. Huge change. Number two, after walking 1.5 miles, what he bought in the grocery store was drastically affected. That is, you're not going to walk 1.5 miles and then buy junk at the grocery store. It changed his whole outlook. That one decision to walk to get all of his meals and to get all of his food, that was the keystone decision that had this domino effect in his life. Everything else in his life changed because he made that one simple decision. In The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg tells a story about a woman who was going through a midlife crisis. Her husband divorced her. She was overweight. She had a major smoking problem and other health issues. And when her husband told her that he was divorcing her, her life basically fell apart. She went into this deep depression. She was chain smoking. And in the midst of it, she felt like, I just need a change of scenery. So she went on a trip to Egypt. And in the middle of this tour to Egypt, she just had this epiphany, this moment where she realized, I just need a goal. I need something that I can focus on so that I can get my life back on track. And so she made a decision that she was going to come back 1 year later and she was going to run across the desert in Egypt. So that was her decision. My decision is 1 year from now, I'm going to run across the desert in Egypt. So once she made that decision, the next thought she had was, well, if I'm going to run across the desert, I guess I better stop smoking. And literally, she was able to just quit smoking cold turkey at that moment. And then secondly, she thought, I better start exercising, because if I'm going to run across the desert, I'm not going to be ready if I don't exercise. So she started exercising. And she gets home and she's not smoking and she's exercising and she's losing weight. The next thing she knows, she starts to eat better because she starts to feel better. She's more productive at work. Her clothes are fitting her better, and now she's needing to buy new clothes. She's got a better attitude. She's happier. She's getting promotions and raises on the job. And everything changed in her life over the course of that year simply because she made a decision that she was going to go back to Egypt a year later and she was going to run across the desert. And sure enough, she went back a year later and she ran across the desert, and that just kind of solidified the life change that she made. you need to make a keystone. You need to identify, and you need to begin to ask the Lord to help you identify, what is the keystone to my life change? That is, what is the one thing that I can do, that I can adopt, that I can begin to do that will bring a major change in multiple areas, in multiple levels of my life? Now, what I would like to challenge you to do is to see the major keystone in your life as spiritual rather than natural. Now, I believe that there can be a natural and a spiritual keystone. But for me, the most important thing is starting and ending every day in prayer and seeking the face of God. Starting and ending every day in prayer and seeking the face of God. That is a keystone habit that feeds everything else. And Jesus said it right there in Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you as well. Literally, Jesus is saying that the kingdom of God is the keystone. Now, you don't have to wait for your willpower to kick in order to start this. You simply need to make a decision tomorrow morning. I'm going to start the day by seeking the face of God, by worshiping Him, seeking His face, and asking God for help. Worshiping Him, submitting my life to Him, and asking God for help. And in the process, ask God, what are the keystones? What are the keystones? What are the keystones? Now, some of you may have an idea in your own mind and heart already what a natural keystone for you might be. Others of you have no clue. But listen, if you do have a clue, I want you to write it in the space provided and say, I think this could be a keystone. If you don't have a clue, I just want you to write, I don't have a clue, but I'm going to begin to ask the Lord about this. And I want you to make it a matter of daily prayer and seeking the face of God. I don't want you to forget this. I want you to come back to this place in your workbook when you have an answer and write it in and say, this is, I believe, is the keystone for me. This is the decision. This is the one thing that I believe if I could make this decision and do this, it'll bring it all together. And so as the Lord gives you this is a major key to the change that you intend to make in your life, and I believe God will empower you to do it.